Welcome back to the Dallas Bankers Club show. I'm Dean Rosencrans, founder and host of the Dallas Bankers Club and the show here at the Real News PR in Lincoln Center. Today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine and also president of a large CFO chapter here called FEI, or Financial Executive International. I've known Deborah for a little while and thought it would be good to share what FEI is doing with you all. So welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to be here.
Awesome. Well, listen, we have known each other for a little while. I've been a sponsor of FEI with Associated Bank for a few years, and prior to that had the fortune of working for Capital One and was a sponsor there. So time flies.
It does.
So tell us a little bit about FEI. My idea for this show was to have you on as president and talk a little bit about what FEI does and the benefits of FEI and how we can attract maybe new CFOs and financial executives to the chapter. But give us an overview of what FEI is.
FEI Dallas Financial Executives Organization is the largest senior level financial professional networking group in the world, really. Dallas is the largest chapter, and we have 700 to 800 members, depending on the time. Mm-hmm. And it's about networking and relationships. So relationships with our sponsors, mm-hmm. to relationships with our peers, to relationships with businesses.
Right.
We have regular chapter meetings, which we meet typically once a month. We have a professional development session,
right.
and a dinner session, networking. We always mm-hmm. have networking. And with your membership, it's all inclusive.
Right.
So thank you to our sponsors. And then several years ago, you said you started out with Capital One.
Right.
And I was CFO for an organization, and Mary Jo Hoke from Capital One
Sure.
mentioned that you have to join this organization.
Yeah.
It's the best networking. You will meet people. It helps build your career. So I'm a CPA, and I'm a PMP.
PMP?
Senior Project Management Professional.
Okay.
Sorry, I know what it is. Why don't you know, Dean?
Acronyms, we got
and I can get all of my continuing ed through
Right.
FEI. And because it's a national organization, we have a lot of members who their certificates sit in different states. So your certificate may be in Oklahoma or New York.
Okay.
But because we're associated with the national organization, your hours will count in your state, and you're certified in that
Okay.
state. Mm-hmm. I think there's probably at least over maybe 50% that are not CPAs.
Okay.
But they're senior level financial people.
Right. And that's also a topic that maybe for a future show or even this one, but when I deal with corporates or companies, there's usually a CFO or SVP of finance or something like that. But what is surprising to me, not everybody is a CPA.
They are not.
And I guess that isn't always the track that CPAs take, is to become a CFO. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can be without, being the CFO of a corporation with that kind of certification. But I'm sorry, I digressed. So
no, but and that's part of the fun, is that financials and forecasting and senior level financial people are more forward-looking and strategic and planning,
right.
Whereas your controllers and accountants are more record-keeping and historians. And so you get to help guide people to success. And if you think about it, your financials touch every aspect in your life, everything from your home mortgage to whether you're
Right.
going to build out, take on additional debt, are all touched by financials. And because of that, the CFO has their fingers in a lot of pies and a lot of directions.
That's right. Yeah. So 800...
Just slightly less, but yeah. In
But
that ball range, yeah.
they don't always come to the...
No, but we have so many different events.
Yeah.
Our Dallas chapter meetings, we have about 350 people.
Sure.
We also have special interest groups, which are more industry focused, which are more more siloed, for lack of a better word. So maybe if you're involved in manufacturing, you would be less interested in the restaurant
Right.
and the
Right.
rules and the things that
Right.
apply. And as you start and you build your career path, you tend to lean towards an industry or another. And the rules and the regs and the people who
Right.
you interact with
Right.
tend to kind of change,
Sure.
and that's kind of your network. But so we have special interest groups.
How many are there?
I think there are about 6 or 7.
So there's most likely a manufacturer.
There's manufacturing, there's retail, restaurant.
Healthcare.
I think they're doing healthcare
Okay.
again. They have private equity,
Sure.
and I'm going to embarrass like a technology type
Sure,
related
yeah.
one, and I don't think it's not called oil and gas, but it's energy
Kind of an energy
related. Yeah,
related.
an energy
Sure.
field.
Yeah.
And they've tried nonprofit a couple of times. So they try, and if we get legs, we stand. If we don't,
Right. Well, I would think that a lot of the special interest groups are driven by those that are attending the meetings.
They are. Those are very-
and want, more dedicated resources to what they do.
Well, and we have one FEI Dallas, Financial Executives International in Dallas Chapter. We have one full-time employee. Everything else is volunteer.
Is that Jackie?
That's Jackie.
Oh, okay. Love Jackie.
And so we have a couple of part-time people who help with the meetings, but
Sure.
the rest of it's volunteers.
Volunteer. Yeah. For such a big organization, that the fact that it is volunteer is pretty amazing. It's a testament to probably the fact that there's so many CPAs and CFOs involved, that everything is a task-oriented.
It
probably.
is. We have a great leadership team. We have great sponsors. We have continuity in sponsors. I think Jackie's been with us, 15, 18 years.
Sure.
And
And your sponsors, I think, have been with you for a very long time as well.
there's a waiting list. I think we're one of the few organizations that have
Yeah.
a waiting list for sponsors.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to, for those that aren't familiar with FEI on the sponsor side, there are various levels of sponsorship, right? I mean, and you got the platinum sponsors, and really they do a lot of the heavy lifting.
They do.
for the sponsor side. I'm on the lower end. But tell us a little bit about, how do you become a sponsor? I mean, who should they reach out to
Oh, goodness.
if they wanted to be a sponsor?
You could reach out to me and I'll direct you.
Okay.
But we focus on, we try not to overload our sponsors with
Right.
we don't want all banks.
Too many industry. Yeah, I get
because
it.
then it's not balanced.
That's right.
Or we kind of try to balance the sponsors in each levels, and also so it's meaningful to the relationship
Right.
and to the members. We have some special event sponsors.
Right.
We have our winter.
I tell you what, I love that. Last year, I got to be one of the sponsors for the gala at where was that? Trinity? Wasn't that the Mardi Gras?
Oh, the
in
winter
the year?
social, yeah.
that
This
was
year,
fun.
this year it's going to be fun too.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, just taking a picture with Eric Holloman and kind of his regalia, that was pretty cool.
Well, that's kind of hard to forget, isn't it? And that's our one event that we do a year with
Right.
spouses.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I also did the golf and the wine tasting. That was a lot of fun as well.
That has grown a lot for
How many
years.
people typically go to that?
Maybe 300
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
Our chapter's been around for over 75 years, and so with that history, and as you know, life has changed, and for several years there weren't women, and now there are women, and women are presidents, but
Right.
75 years ago in Dallas was a very different culture than it is
Can you
today.
imagine? What it would have been, what
Well,
that
it's
meeting
a-
was like?
Yeah, it's a very different culture. Well, it's
Yeah.
before internet, before you used to
I
have
wonder
to
what they did
interview.
back then.
You'd have to ask one of them.
Yeah. Do we have any left?
We have a few. We have a
Really?
few that have been around for a lot. We have some 40 and 50-year members. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, so you're a CFO,
Yes.
and what you get out of FEI is very obvious. Sounds like a lot of great networking opportunities, really good, strong relationships. If I was a CFO and I wanted to have some interest in FEI, and outside of CPE credits, am I going to show up and I'm going to be standing by myself?
I think part of that, honestly, is a choice. You can choose to engage or not to engage. At our chapter meetings, we have new and prospective member socials, so everyone there is kind of new. We also have, at our chapter meetings, we have name badges, which helps. Sometimes we need bigger glasses to read them. But the green bars are new members, the yellow bars are guests, and they kind of mean different things, which help you. We also publish a list before the meeting of who will be there. So if you know that you want to meet somebody from Associated Bank, just say, hey, Dean will be there. And then you just ask someone, can you introduce me to Dean? If you wanted something besides CPE, probably the main reason that people join FEI is career advancement or career opportunities and networking.
Right.
And financial people aren't always as social as maybe other people are.
Right.
And so it's a chance to have an automatic network. I have never, in all the years I've belonged to FEI, if I've had a question, you could pick it up and pick up the phone or send someone an email and say, hey, can you direct me?
Right.
Because sometimes if you just know the direction to get information, then you can get to the right answer. You can say, hey, this is what's going on. Do you know someone who's faced this challenge? And then, if nothing else, you know how they manage that process.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot at FEI meetings, that from the specialized industry groups, but just in general, when somebody has a particular issue, maybe a tax question, or a lot of it has to do around tax and what new regulations are.
And we do that update every year, compliance, or what size of company you have, public, private, who do we talk to?
Yeah, and you bring in some pretty powerful individuals and companies, CPA firms, top 4 CPA firms, or just industry professionals, subject matter experts, that really make just going to one meeting very valuable.
It does.
Right? So, one of the questions that has always kind of come across my mind about CFOs and just companies in general, depending on the size of the company, certainly large corporate has a CFO, and then there's really various layers underneath that I would engage with, depending on what the need is from a finance perspective. But smaller companies, let's say you're a $5 million company.
Okay.
And you're really struggling with trying to keep all the balls in the air with regards to, I've got to pay my vendors, I got to pay my people, I've got all these various things. When is the right time, and what is the right person from a title perspective? I mean, do I go ahead and hire a full-blown CFO, or do I hire a controller, or do I groom somebody? What have you seen?
I have seen all versions of that, and I think everyone needs to evaluate their situation. And, if you have property tax issues, does your person, in my opinion, does your person know enough to know where to look for help?
Right.
Do you really want a accounts payable person trying to deal with bank covenants? Maybe not so much.
Right.
Maybe you'd want to bring a consultant in to manage pieces of it, so you could get the puzzle put together. I think that the personalities of a firm make a big difference. Are you highly structured, or are you a little more? It's like when you're building a house, if you need a roof, you don't necessarily hire a plumber.
Right.
So you need to kind of think about that, or maybe hire somebody to look at it and say, I'll be the general contractor and tell you need these kind of things, which may be a consultant.
Right. So from a consultancy perspective, because you raised a very good topic there about, I don't know how to access professionals like yourself as a business owner. So what is your advice that, okay, I need this type of person, I know what I need, what do I do? Do I go to LinkedIn? Do I call a friend? I mean, are there certain areas that they can go to just say, there's like a Angie's List of CPAs.
But do you really want that? It's like, do you want just whomever off the street?
Right.
So the advantage is by being involved with FEI, you would know people who would work for them.
Sure.
If they gave the recommendation, they're going to stand behind them. But we have great sponsors, banks who have worked with people.
Yes.
I think in volunteer work, you have an idea of people's character and nature. You get a feel for that. So our banks, we have recruiters. We have FEI, Financial Executive Networking Group, which helps with employment. We have great recruiters who work with us. And all of our members, a lot of our members do consulting work. A lot of them have touched other people or worked with other people and say, whomever does taxes or, that's international tax. You don't want to touch them for property tax because they're different areas.
Sure.
We have new covenants coming up. Have you thought about concentrations and how that's going to impact you? And is this the right customer for you to gain today? So I think that maybe if you're looking to hire someone, you need to, rather than just fill a box, which, like, for instance, a payables clerk, and I hate to just harp on that, but might be able to get the bills paid, but they can't move you forward strategically.
Strategically, and they can get you in trouble too if you put too much on their plate that they're not real familiar with. As the example that you brought up with covenants, as a banker, there is usually a report that needs to be sent out along with your financials. What I've noticed is that if depending on the size of the company, it's a hodgepodge of ad hoc reporting that you're.
It can be. And a $5 million company probably does financials on Excel.
Excel,
QuickBooks and Excel. Yes.
And I think one of the things that I try to with this show to educate some of the owners, CEOs, CFOs, etc., is that. Depending on the size of credit that you're looking for, I mean, if you're looking for $100,000, financial reports aren't going to really be that big of a deal.
Right.
I mean, here's your tax, give me your tax returns and everything's fine. But in the more complex deals, I mean, audits are typically required in those scenarios, right? So help us understand for those companies so from my perspective, you now know when I need an audit. What do you recommend people do when they're faced with, do I do a review? Do I do a full-blown audit? What are some of the recommendations there? Because a lot of times they're going, well, maybe I want to do an audit. Well, why?
I would ask, start with what your goal is.
Right.
Why do you want an audit? Is it an audit required by the bank? Is it required by potential investors?
Right.
Do you have inventory or something that needs to be validated or valued? Is it a purchase? Are you planning on selling? Are you going to have to do a valuation? Does it have to stand up to a valuation and working capital? I think you need to look at the purpose you're thinking of an audit and then find the right firm. Sure. Because you may need a sleeker, clean audit versus a Mercedes today to hit your goal. Sure. What is the purpose and where will these financials be used? And in this day and age, we're touching a lot of international.
Right.
Do we need to restate things in international financial reporting standards?
Sure.
Are our investors all U.S.? Are we touching? And so I think that I need an audit needs to be bigger than why. You need the why.
Yeah.
You need to start with the why.
Oftentimes I've been at several banks that, starting at around $5 million from a credit perspective, there's usually some credit policy that suggests either it's a review or an audit. But for me personally, what I like when I get an audit is I can just go to the notes section and really get a pretty good idea of what I'm dealing with, right? So the numbers are the numbers, but those notes are really something that I focus on.
And the notes, depending on who's driving your audit and what they share and prepare, can be a lot more meaningful. Right. And I think audits, it's important to be transparent because that's the purpose. It's not. Right. I think an audit is not adversary.
Right.
Except maybe unless it's the IRS.
Right.
But with
Right.
banks and relationships in the financial
Sure.
world, it's you've got to find the right partner. Mm-hmm. You have to build the right relationships. You have to meet deadlines timely.
Right.
And misinformation, disinformation, or missed deadlines is not useful.
Right. It's costly.
It's costly. And it, in many ways, it's
Yeah.
financially costly, it's relationship costly, it's can mess up your future.
That's right. So, some of your latest experiences. I know that you're CFO for Queen's Winery. Tell us a little bit about Queen's Winery. I mean, I've talked to you and Ray about this, but for our audience that isn't familiar with Queen's Winery, where can we find it and what is it?
Mainly you can order it online now. It's
Okay.
a wine made from honey. So any alcohol, any sugar source basically can be made into alcohol. But in the Middle Ages and before, in the Middle Ages, they would make enough honey wine to last a newlywed couple a lunar cycle, which is where the term honeymoon comes from.
Oh, really?
And honey wine was what was served to the married couple. And if you think about it, grapes came a long time after honey. And so honey was available. It was a sweet source, and you can ferment honey. So you can make it as sweet as sugar, where it smells like honey,
Really?
tastes like honey, or it can be dry, which is unusual to taste honey that's not sweet.
Right.
But it has to do with how much sugar is fermented out of the alcohol.
Wow. So you
And-
don't necessarily need a lot of land for this winery.
For this winery,
But you
don't
probably
it.
need
But
bees.
You need bees or access to honey,
Yeah.
or you can blend honey. I've learned a lot about bees over the years. But just like our wineries and the alcohol industry in Texas is growing, and it's what 10th or 11th in the nation now.
Really?
It's really grown.
I'm not much of a wine drinker. So
Oh well, we
my
have
wife tries, but I just
we also
more of a
have
bourbon.
Well, we've got bourbons.
Honey bourbon?
No, actually, have you had honey and bourbon?
No.
Blends of it.
Oh.
You can put it in the bourbon or the barrels. Anyway, that's a whole alcohol's
another
a whole
show.
other show. But then we have our custom breweries and distilleries through Texas. Alcohol is growing in Texas.
Wow.
But just like you can source your honey, and you don't have to have your bees and do that, you can source your grapes. You can purchase grapes. You can purchase your grain. You can purchase your potatoes. Whatever you choose.
Sure.
Where you don't have to be the agriculture piece and you can be the brewer,
Sure.
the distiller.
Yeah.
So you have a choice.
So queenswinery.com gets me to. All right. Well, I'm going to actually buy a case and see what that's. Maybe Christmas gifts.
And we do custom engraving if you want to engrave them for a friend.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, so, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and our relationship that we have with FEI. I want to have you back on the show, and we'll come up with some various topics to discuss. But for those that are interested in FEI, Financial Executives International Dallas Chapter, reach out to Deborah or one of their advisory board members that are always going abroad. And we look forward to seeing you at an FEI upcoming event. But in the interim, we appreciate you viewing the Dallas Bankers Club show, and we'll see you the next time. Cheers.